And I don't think very many funeral homes are directly marketing to a segment of the market that they should be marketing to, right? Because we all think direct cremations are all the same, but they're not. Their needs are different, their wants are different. And I think we're going to have to market differently. We're going to have to run the business differently. So yeah, there's been a lot of change in 10 years, but honestly, I think the biggest change is yet to come. I mean, that's how our team sees it. You got to be really, really good at recruiting people now too. Not just funeral directors, but administrative talent. Got to leverage technology. The Parting Pro platform is a good example of efficiency, right? We need to be as efficient as we can. I'm going to say it's harder than ever to be a funeral homeowner in all likelihood. But, welcome to business, right? Whoever said owning a business was easy.
Welcome to the Direct Cremation Podcast with your host, Tyler Yamasaki. Hi, thank you for joining us on the Direct Cremation Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Yamasaki, CEO of Parting Pro, the #1 online arrangement platform. If you like the content, please give us a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave a comment. So today's guest has over 3 decades of experience in death care. As the president and founding member of Graystone Associates, he has spent the last 20 years helping funeral home owners meet their goals. While you won't see him making a big fuss at the national shows, they are no short supply of satisfied and successful customers. Please welcome Scott Newton to the Direct Cremation Podcast. Hi, Scott.
Hey, Tyler. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing fantastic. Yeah, no complaints.
Awesome. So can you maybe take me back to the beginning? How did you find yourself in death care? And then after that, how did you find yourself starting Graystone Associates?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you're too young to probably remember what a job ad looked like in a newspaper. But my wife got a pretty significant promotion with Apple Computer to move from Austin to Phoenix in 1994. So I quit my job in Austin. I was a financial planner working in finance. I had my education was economics. And applied to an ad in the newspaper for a financial analyst job. And it turned out to be a job at Foresight in summer of 1994. Worked there for 6 to 12 months. I can't remember. Left there with a couple of people. We started a little M&A kind of brokerage boutique firm, did pretty well for a few years, got recruited to work at Carriage and helped them on the acquisition side for, I think it was about 2 years. Helped them buy some funeral homes. That was a fantastic experience for me from just a, learning standpoint. Big business environment versus, having my own little business. And then for those that were around in 2000, they were, the deal world just died overnight. I didn't want to go in operations. I didn't think there was another place for me in funeral service. So I actually left funeral service from February of 2000 or so, went and did M&A work in software and media, got a great education that way. And then in the fall of 2003, started Graystone with a gentleman who's been retired for, I guess Frank retired 12 years ago. His name was Frank Sessions. And Frank had some good training content, didn't have a lot of data management. I had known him from my prior experience in funeral service. And my wife wanted to move home to Detroit. And so I found myself unemployed. I jizzed the joke. And so I called him up. I'm like, hey, what's going on in funeral service these days? And got a lay of the land. And we decided he had 1 or 2 customers, I guess. And we decided to start this company together. And here we are literally 24 years later.
Awesome. An entrepreneur will always find something to do, huh?
Oh, yeah. I get bored quick. So I've got to get out there and do stuff. So, yeah, it's been great. It's been a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Awesome. So it sounds like Graystone started pretty small, and I'm sure you had a very small subset of things you would do. But what does Graystone do now, and how does it help funeral homes?
Yeah, I'll give you the real 50,000 foot level, and I think that's the easiest way. It's pretty I joke our customers can explain what we do better than I can do it. But we focus really on just a couple of main things, and then from there we do a million different things, and it's a combination of training and data measurement. So we delivered last year close to 400 days of field training out at funeral homes, everything from as basic as handling phone shoppers, arrangement conference, techniques. We have 30 training modules that we deliver on site. We do a lot of off-site training. Our training are 6 to 8 hour sessions. Our average customer will have us out for training 4 to 10 days a year. And then we have the whole side of the house that I kind of supervise, which is what we call account management, which is the business side, right? Measuring the customer satisfaction results, measuring revenue performance, helping them put guidelines and bumpers in place on how they manage their P&Ls. And our philosophy from day one was, we don't just believe in training and we don't just believe in measuring performance because they're related, right? You can't do one without the others. Now that's our philosophy. I'm not saying that's everybody's philosophy, but that's our philosophy. And so from that stems everything from management training, management development. We do a lot of work with ownership on how can they really, this sounds a little strange, but how can they be the best owners they can be? So we end up getting involved in a lot of strategic planning, a lot of direction setting. We have, I think it's 8 now, licensed funeral directors on staff that have all managed good-sized funeral homes. And so they pitch in a lot on operational strategy. So there's probably, we don't get deeply involved in HR because there's just so many state-centric quirks that we get a little nervous giving people very specific HR guidance. We don't get involved in FTC things and a few of those items, but we probably touch in that, and we don't get involved in all that marketing and advertising. That's one area that we generally don't dip our feet into very deeply. But now, we feel like we really have as good or better of an understanding of the business than anybody, because not only do we have, oh boy, Tyler, I guess about 135 funeral homes we work with now, but some of them own cemeteries, monument businesses. I mean, they're very, very, very diversified. And so it seems like we see every aspect of the profession and feel like we collect data on all of it. And so we feel like we have a really, really good ability to help. Our customers tell us often that one of the best benefits of being part of the Graystone group is that they get a lot of very helpful information, business specific information from our other customers. Mm-hmm. And so to be able to share, what's really working in business A or community A with business B and community B, in actual factual information from people that are using the same training, the same data measurements, it really helps create a playing field where there's a lot of education shared between customers. We have, I think it's 9 funeral homes in Canada we work with, maybe more. So we do have a decent presence north of the border. Their businesses are a little different, but they're not that different. And so, we really pride ourselves on trying to learn every day, and not just, some ideas don't make good business plans, right? But, we try to really learn what's really, really working, what's not working, and try to share that with customers across our group as much as we can. I think people find that really valuable.
What is the goal when you engage a customer or a customer engages you? Like, are they trying to just get their business to be more successful or successful? Like, are they more trying to save their business, or are they trying to get themselves set up so that they can prepare for an M&A? Like, where do your customers, like, how does that break up?
We are not in the salvation business. So, so if one thing I know about funeral service is when things aren't going well and they've not been going well for a long time, it's hard to change it. So I would say the average funeral home that hires us is not all, but on average, they've gotten to a size where they feel like there's too much inconsistency in performance day to day, right? Whether that's between their locations, between their arrangers, between their team. And they know that, and what we know in funeral services, inconsistency creates inconsistent results. And when you have inconsistent results, guess what happens? The bottom line isn't as strong as it needs to be. You have too much variance in customer service, too much variance in revenue. This is a super, super high fixed cost business. And if you own a funeral home today, you don't understand the levers on generating revenue through creative pricing, through training, through presentation, it's a really tough business now. It's just so expensive to operate a funeral home, right? It's never been more expensive to update real estate, put on additions, staffing. And so you've got to really understand the volume metric. And so most people that hire us have really good businesses. They're usually one of the larger funeral homes in their market, if not the largest funeral home in their market. That's not always true. I don't mean to say we work with just large funeral homes, because we don't. Maybe I should use the word successful. Let's change that word. But they're investors, right? They know that they can get better. They know that they need to get better. And they're willing to invest time and energy in their team members and their business to try to continue to improve everything they do, right? Whether it's staffing, operations, business performance. And so we find the type of person that tends to hire us is a little bit hungry for growth. They're a little bit hungry for improvement. And they know they don't have all the answers, right? They're like, look, if you guys can help me, great, but I know I don't have it all figured out. And that's generally, that's generally the commonality between it all.
So you said you work with usually some, or not usually, but sometimes the most successful funeral home in their market, but you still come in and you're still able to help. So what would you say are some of the biggest immediate gaps that you see that often go overlooked by funeral homeowners who are already doing well?
So I'll put the business side to the side for a minute. So I would say my quick answer to that is it all revolves around their personnel, right? Most of our customers would admit that they weren't born natural leaders or managers. Their managers weren't necessarily born natural leaders or managers. They were good funeral directors. And what we find, across all of our customers, especially when we start, is there's usually a lot of really good people, a lot of really nice people, but there tends to be a bit of a lack of direction. There tends to be a lack of accountability, lack of structure, lack of processes, or the lack of willingness to follow process. Not all, but I think a lot of them find that, managing people is really hard. And
Yes.
they're looking for tools and they're looking for ideas and they're looking for ways that they can and help their staff become better at what they do, help, and at the end of the day help deliver better service, right? Because at the end of the day that's the name of the game. And I would say it's really driven mostly by personnel and the need to create more consistency among their personnel. And look, we're a training company, and people that hire us know they need training, and they even have a hard time once they engage us reinforcing some of our training. And so, the lack of consistent training and the lack of consistent expectations and direction setting, and then channeling that into an environment where, whether you have 10 people on staff or whether you have 100 people on staff, getting everybody on the same page is hard. And, we try to train to not a process, that's not right. We try to train, and get the team on the same page, right? And when you can communicate better, when you can share ideas better and create a culture where, we're all focused on one thing, which is delivering the very best service we can, it just makes it an easier place to work. It makes it a better place to work. And, we spend a lot of time with owners and managers on how to really set expectations, how to hold people accountable, how to delegate, time management. And, when the owner performs well, when the managers perform well, what happens? The staff does better.
Okay.
So it's definitely the personnel side of the house that is a driver for a lot of people.
Okay. So I want to ask this question still, even though I know you kind of answered it, because, I think that a portion of people like to chase the shiny objects, right?
There's no doubt.
Yeah.
There's no
And
doubt.
I'm the same way, right? We see something that seems shiny and we like to jump on it and hopefully, but, what portion of businesses that you engage with is really about, creating new ideas and finding new business lines versus just, setting the accountability and making sure that that the funeral home executes within the funeral home to like make sure that they hit their goals?
I would say the majority is number two. People really want to take their core business and their existing business and make sure it's performing as well as it can. But I would also say that there, I don't want to sound kind of closed-minded, but how many really lines of business are there in funeral service, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so there's only so many different things you can do. There's only so many different businesses you can be in. And, some of our customers touch all of them, right? They've got cemeteries, they've got the minimalist operation, they got the traditional funeral home, they might be in the monument business, but when we think about funeral service as a profession, there's only so many new lines of businesses, if you will, that you can get into, right? A lot of it is tweaks around the edges, new revenue streams, maybe. I would say a lot of our people are shiny object chasers to the extent that they've tinkered and toyed around with, whether it be another consultant or, whatever it may be. They're people that tend to look for new ideas, if that makes sense. But a lot of them are still focused on their core funeral home, but they'll have these ancillary businesses supporting the core funeral home as well.
I see. Okay. Well, yeah, I'd say up until the last decade or so, funeral service has been a pretty stable profession, as an industry. Change, I think, was always slow and there wasn't a lot of, let's say, different types of businesses. And not just talking about disposition, but, we've seen quite a bit happen in the last 10 years. And, as someone who has kind of been around from, you're kind of like the millennial of deathcare, where you've seen what it was like before the internet, and you've now seen what it's like after the internet, kind of. What are your thoughts on this rapid change that we're starting to see and how it affects the funeral homeowner?
I don't know if it's a black and white answer, and the reason I say that is we have our customers have almost 400 physical rooftops that they operate out of. That's a lot of different communities, between, British Columbia to Toronto to South Florida to New Hampshire, Orange County. I would say some areas have experienced change faster than others, right? Some areas that have still more of a traditional religious, connection versus those that are super secular. We see a huge diversity across the board. I think some of the biggest changes that we've seen, everybody can talk about online direct cremation and everything else. To me, that's not revolutionary. That's just a different way to attract certain people that are looking for a certain thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt that market's growing. There's no doubt that market's going to continue to grow in volume. And this may not be the answer you're looking for. You thought I was going to say. I think the biggest changes are yet to come. And what I mean by that is, I think what has made people successful in the past won't necessarily make them successful in the future. And what I mean by that is, we have a client conference every February. We get, 100 of our customers there, or 100 people there from our customers. And we always try to have a little segment on where do we think things are going in the world. And sure, everybody we work with, needs to be a wonderful service provider. They need as many wonderful reviews as they can from people. But at the end of the day, when I think about what do I think is a successful funeral home is going to look like in 5 or 10 years because of the changes, I think it's going to be owners that are willing to take more risk in how they price and how they charge. And I don't mean expensive. I just mean creatively. I think it's going to be people that are very, very good at constantly recruiting talent and finding talent. There's only so much we can push online. To be honest with you, there's only so much you can do online. We still have deceased people. We still have grieving people. This is not I'm not buying shoes on Amazon when my mom dies. There's the people component. And then I think, and this is maybe not going to sound overly nice, but people that know me know I'm not necessarily over nice, is you didn't have to be the world's greatest business person to be successful historically in funeral service, right? You just didn't have to be. And, operating margins are still very healthy, but I think those people that really understand the business levers moving forward, more so than just being a funeral director, are definitely going to be the ones that are going to thrive, right? They're going to know how to integrate their online cremation brand. They're going to know how much they should be paying people and why. They're going to understand things like incentive compensation and capital expense management and financing. And I just think that the successful owners in the future may or may not be the people that have been successful to date. I'm not saying it may be totally different, but I think around the margins, there's, the funeral homeowners definitely need to understand that they're running businesses, and we have, if we don't run the right business, we don't generate the capital we need to generate to reinvest in facilities and people, right? It's expensive to own real estate now. You want to put a new toilet in your bathroom, that's 20 grand, right? Forget the whole renovation. We have to generate cash flow to be able to reinvest. And that's just not necessarily the mindset that the profession has had for 150 years or whatever it's been. And I don't think it's good or bad or right or wrong. I just think it's different. And I think, if I can get off on a tangent for a second, but I think when I say traditional funeral homes, right, the full service funeral home is 20,000 square feet, all that good stuff. I think if these people don't learn how to market themselves differently to cremation consumers in a way that the cremation consumer understands why I might go back to that funeral home as opposed to go online for $12.95, I think that's going to be a real challenge. And I don't think very many funeral homes are directly marketing to a segment of the market that they should be marketing to, right? Because we all think direct cremations are all the same, but they're not. Their needs are different, their wants are different, and I think we're going to have to market differently. We're going to have to run the business differently. So yeah, there's been a lot of change in 10 years, but honestly, I think the biggest change is yet to come. That's how our team sees it, and you got to be really, really good at recruiting people now too. Not just funeral directors, but administrative talent. Got to leverage technology. The Party Pro platform is a good example of efficiency, right? We need to be as efficient as we can. I'm going to say it's harder than ever to be a funeral home owner in all likelihood, but welcome to business, right? Whoever said owning a business was easy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of the things that you mentioned really have nothing to do with funeral homes
No,
specific, right? They're not
right.
like recruiting, HR, keeping engaged and happy employees. Those are what every business is struggling against
Correct.
today, and
Yeah,
it's
that's right.
hard. Something interesting that I thought you said is like it kind of sounds like you think people will have to adapt, and the biggest changes are coming. And I think there's always going to be this push for more innovation and kind of chasing or at least being at the forefront of what the next best thing is. And what are your thoughts on having to quickly adapt versus really anchoring into what works and kind of doubling down on that and staying kind of comfortable at what is working for your business?
I mean, it's a weird thing in funeral service, right? So I think about some of our customers, and it's a unique industry in that, the phrase pick your customers, I can't remember, the exact phrase that's out there in business
Mhm.
world, right? But you can't do that in funeral service in a lot of reasons, in a lot of ways. And the reason I say that is, the average funeral home today might have a very traditional Catholic family that walks in that says, Mama, Grandmama, Granddaddy, every week we had was in that room. I want the same exact thing we've done 3 times before, and I don't want any different. And then the next family that might walk in says, I hate embalming. I don't want my mom embalmed. I want a memorial service with a party and a life celebration. The next family might be a secular family that says, I hate all funeral homes. How fast can I get out of here? And so, it's just such a diverse, and you need, as a funeral owner, you need all that business, right? You need all of it because it's such a high fixed cost business. And so the little old lady, or the, grandma that dies at 95 doesn't care that you can, this is an overstatement, but, doesn't care that you can live stream the funeral. But another person might say, if you can't live stream the funeral, I'm going to a different funeral home. And so,
Yeah.
it's not a one catch all innovation is what I'm saying. I think you have to be able to offer as many services as you can offer to people, whether it's something as simple as streaming, receptions, whatever it may be. But, there's still a lot of families that come back in and say, we're going to do for mom what we did for dad. And so funeral homes kind of get stuck and it's not their fault. I mean, it's, they get stuck between how do I keep, that generation happy, and yet how do I appeal, to these people who want things different. And so I'm going to say it's maybe a little, I don't say it's less about innovation, but I think it's more about flexibility and adaptation.
Yeah.
And, how can you, and we see it in our Canadian customers the most, right? Because they serve a more diverse customer base. They serve a more, it's hard to describe, but, Canada has more immigrants, more, the whole 9 yards. And so they have a lot of diversity in their business. And if you can't learn how to adapt from one customer's needs to the next, you really struggle.
Mm-hmm.
I think flexibility and adaptation, they'd be able to change, on the dime, which is hard for a lot of people, right? If I've been making funeral arrangements for 30 years, it's hard to change. And so I think that's super important. And it's just, we're going to continue to see different demands, different requests. So I think it's the ability to evolve with the needs of the customer that's more important with what's the next innovative thing I'm going to do. And I think there's a
Got
lot of
it.
funeral homes that may, I was in Boston this week, right? I don't know if you've been to Boston, I drove by a couple of funeral homes that were not our customers, but on the way to customers, I'm like, how is this business still in business, right? You can just by looking at the facility. And, I think there's a lot of people out there that don't think they need to change as much as they see that they need to change. That's my opinion, but we work with a lot of progressive people. So maybe I'm just so exposed to the more progressive side of the profession that it just is common sense to me.
Yeah, I would say when I first entered the death care industry that I was very much like, direct cremation is going to be the one and only thing. And then you realize, like, obviously that was very naive of me, but you start to see, there's still 50% of people that still are going to choose not direct or not cremation, right? Burials.
Right.
And even with cremation customers are going to choose memorial services or
Right.
whatever, or
They're
full
going to choose
services,
service.
then a cremation, right?
Right.
So, you realize that there's still a huge segment of everybody out there.
Well, and when you look at the data we collect on our cremation, we call them cremation minimalists. We have a few trademarks. I mean, we call them self-directed, cremation self-directed people, cremation minimalists. I don't know, Tyler, 80% of our customers have one of their businesses, one of these online minimalist businesses. And when we get survey data back from those people, what you realize is a lot of those people that are choosing the simple online cremation, 25 to 35% of them are doing some type of service. They have just chosen not to use the traditional funeral home for their cremation. Mm-hmm. Now, whether that service was a barbecue at the county park or whether it was a $50,000 reception at the country club, it's hard to get all that intel. But a lot of people that even go that route, and people should do something, right? I mean, at the end of the day, people should do something. So you're right. I mean, there is a market for cremation service oriented families that I think that the full service funeral homes have to chase hard. And it feels like they've given up on it. Right? It feels like a lot of people said, well, if it's a direct cremation, we're just going to push them online. And, I think we got to fight hard for every one of those direct cremations on the full service side too.
So I guess my question to you would be, let's just say there is a customer, and let's just say they're like a family, and I don't want to call them confused, but they're confused, right? So they come in only wanting to do a direct cremation, but you understand that they're going to do much more services after that, whether it be a memorial service at a hotel or
Right.
country club or whatever.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to have the best chance? Like the direct cremation company that can expand their services into doing maybe like a more planning type thing where they will help facilitate some of that stuff? Or do you think it's more about the traditional guys coming in and marketing more towards those direct cremation people and bringing them into what they kind of already have established? Because, that can be challenging in its own right, because you're going against what I think the customer thinks they want when they really don't know, versus, I already have this customer and now it's building upon what I've offered to give to them. Right. So how would you attack it if you were one or the other?
So I think what we've seen through our clients is that the ability to, let's go with the minimalist model first.
Mm-hmm.
Let me take even one step back, Tyler. Sorry. So I think the consumer today, whether it's funeral service, pick it, doesn't matter. Whether I'm booking a vacation, a cruise, they do a lot of research on the internet, right? We all know that. And I think that today, certainly versus 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, when that person decides to use, the Cremation Society of New Hampshire or Toledo or, whoever it is, they know they're going there because that's what they want. They're not going to that storefront property, or they're not going to, whatever, looking for anything other than that. And the data we can collect from customers tells us that about the only thing that a lot of those people really want is maybe they want to see their, loved one one last time or whatever. But I'll just use the word upsell just because it's easy. Upselling that customer to a memorial service or whatever, very difficult. Mm-hmm. Alternatively, if someone has chosen to go to, the full service funeral home in the community, they've done that in knowing that they're going to the full service funeral home in that community. That doesn't mean that they're open to, changing their mind from a direct cremation to, to memorial service instantly. But what we try to, I wish one of our training guys was on the call. He or she would do a better job than me. But, we try to get through in training is you have to ask the right questions and you have to be willing to get your hand slapped. If we just have families that come in and say, I want a direct cremation, and we write the contract up, we're not doing them a service and we're not doing ourselves any good. And so we need to ask a few questions, make sure we understand their needs, are we addressing their wants or their needs, right? And we try to train to addressing their needs. And, you have to be willing to take the risk, if that's one way to put it, to say, okay, I understand, Tyler, you're interested in direct cremation. Let me make sure what all your options are. And having that conversation needs to happen in a way that's not salesy. We're not selling used cars. But I've joked at one of our summits more than once. Look, no one walks into the Ferrari dealership and says, "Do you have a Yugo?" Right? Nobody goes to the Toyota dealership and says, "I'm looking for a Porsche." Yeah. And I think the market. I think one of the things that we've seen definitely changing over time is the market is more educated, and they're making their decisions with more information. And so when they pick one of the two options, most of the time they've picked it not by accident, right? And so know what that customer's coming to you for. Okay. And then how do you satisfy that need? So I would say that the simple minimalist online brand, or whatever we want to call it today, we need to be professional with those people. We need to be respectful. We need to, they want things done in a timely manner. They want things done accurately, but they know they're coming to one of those brands. They're not looking for embalming. They're not looking for visitation. They're looking for death certificates, cremation, and some basic stuff.
Yeah. And I think from a operator side, that's one of the hardest mental shifts that a lot of these people that start brands have to get over, is that, it's still a family that is grieving and has someone that they've lost. And it's not necessarily that they need all the bells and whistles, but they still need to be treated in a certain way,
No,
or
you're right.
they still have expectations.
When I hear people say things like, yeah, well, it was just one of our cremation society calls, who cares if they're mad? I mean, it's asinine, right? Because I want you to think about this, right? Let's say you have a $9.95 cremation. If I went to the Ritz-Carlton and spent $9.95, do you think I'm going to have at least reasonable expectations? I get good service? Of course you are, right? I mean, what else are you going to do today and spend $900, $1,000, $2,000? And I think people misinterpret the expectation that the cremation minimalist consumer has.
Yeah, very interesting. So let's get into some number stuff. I know you're the numbers guy. I don't know, because let's say I haven't been in death care as long, but it seems like the M&A side of death care is faster than it's ever been, or it's more active than it's ever been. Would you say that's true?
I would say it was up until maybe 18 months ago, give or take.
Yeah.
We've seen a notable slowdown in that activity in the last 12 to 24 months. Significant. With one exception, just because of my background in corporate finance, working for Carriage, some of that stuff. Anytime one of our customers gets a chance to buy a funeral home, I tend to get involved a lot. And so I would bet you in the last year, I've probably helped make 40 to 50 offers to buy funeral homes. But the commonality between many of them is there are between 100 to 200 calls. The owner operators are frustrated they can't find people. They're on call 24 hours a day and they're looking for a change. There's a lot of that out there right now. But in terms of the big 10, 20, $30 million transactions, from what I can see, I mean, I don't know everything, but from what I can see working with our customers, those have really, really slowed down. But there's a lot of smaller deals out there. Now, the problem with a lot of those is, especially you get to the Northeast, you get to California, the value of their business is not generating enough cash flow, or the business isn't generating enough cash flow to justify much of a business value above just what the real estate's worth. And so now they're stuck in a position where they want to get out and they want to get paid for their business, but they're kind of stuck holding the bag on the business side. And sell my funeral home in Boston for $5 million and I'm doing 100 calls. Well, no one's going to buy your business, but you're going to retire a millionaire because you got great real estate. So, I mean, there's a lot of different, there's a lot of different things. There's a lot of different push-pull dynamics in the M&A market right now. And interest rates are high. Banks are very, 7.75% borrowing rate. That doesn't impact the buyer, remember, because the buyer's only got so much cash flow. It impacts the seller. So now the seller's business is worth less because it costs more to borrow the money. I mean, we have seen a slowdown in a lot of deals. A lot of the regional buyers seem to be slowing down. So, we're in this post-COVID environment. Volume's been pretty quiet for the last 2 years. I don't think anybody really has a sense. If anybody knows, I'd be glad to pay them for it. But I don't think anybody has a sense, when these supposed baby boomers are all going to start dying. And so,
everyone's patiently waiting.
I've been waiting. I've been 20 years ago. We were talking about this, right? And
yeah.
So I don't know. I don't see as many deals as I had the last couple of years. I would say certainly between like 18 and 19 and 2022, it was busy. There are a lot of deals going on, no doubt about it. And if I were a buyer buying funeral homes right now, I give this advice to our customers all the time. You better buy one in the right neighborhood that's fully staffed, and or you have the staff to cover it, because funeral directors aren't going to start falling out of trees anytime soon. So, I think a lot of the deals right now either are or should be based on, is it in an area where I can find people, recruit people, and properly staff it? Because if the answer to that is no, then you got to run from it.
I see. So
it's
a challenging business, because I know a lot of these long-standing owners had dreams of selling to retire or passing it along. But the passing it along is less and less now. So
that's right. I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that.
So on a number side, what would you say is some of the major factors that can impact valuation of a business? Like if you're a funeral home owner and you're sitting on, obviously, the real estate, let's just take out the real estate, because that could be.
Yeah.
Right. If you're looking at your P&L and you're looking at, let's just say, you don't even have to give multiples, but just say, what are some of the major numbers that I should be optimizing, I guess, to increase my valuation, so that when I do go to sell my company, I'm not shocked at how little I'm going to get.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that there's a lot of shock there that happens.
There can be, because, I'm a business owner, you're a business owner, right? We always think our businesses are worth more than they are. So once you kind of get past that emotional, total, I'll give you a few things that we tell people all the time. Number one is, you got to do everything you can to grow volume every day, right? You got to, if you're not waking up every day hungry for the next call, it's problematic, right? And that's easier said than, in some markets, our customers have such high market share that they don't even know where they would get the next call from, right? I mean, I get that. Not everybody can just say, hey, okay, I'm at 30% of the market. If I can get to 40 in the next 10 years, I'm going to be thrilled. And so, but number one, you got to be hungry for volume, right? Volume solves a lot of problems in our profession. Associated with that, however, is I will tell you that from two different perspectives, the funeral homes we've helped sell and or the funeral homes I know that I weren't part of that definitely got the best valuations. I would say there were one main absolute correlation, especially among our customer base, is they're very, very good at generating revenue. When I get, and this happens all the time, let me just give you this example. When, we have a customer, doesn't matter where they're at. Hey, Scott, got a chance to buy this funeral home. I'm going to send you their financials, a little bit of contract at it. Yeah, no problem. And we get it and we look at it. I would tell you 9 out of 10 times that revenue per call from that funeral home is anywhere from 10 to 20% lower than our customers. I mean, not saying we're the world's greatest rocket scientists here, but if I don't know how to generate revenue through pricing, packaging, sales training, the whole 9 yards, that's the number one detriment to not selling a business or not achieving a high valuation. And I don't think, so I have a phrase called under-revenued. And I know that's not proper grammar, but I ask people all the time, I'm like, are you under-revenued or are you properly revenued? And so the reason that's so critical is if you and I both operate funeral homes in the same community, we have the same cost of doing business, period. Costs us the same to hire funeral directors, pay property taxes, pay the light bills. But if I'm just more sophisticated than you and more competent at pricing, merchandising, and sales training, and my revenue per call is 10% higher than yours because the costs are so fixed in our business, I bet my business is worth 20 or 30 more, or 20% or 30% more. It's not a one-to-one, it's a multiple of that. So number one, I would say if you want to maximize your business value, you have to know the levers to pull to maximize revenue, period. Start, stop, finish. Retaining shopper calls, revenue per call. We beat revenue per call to death with our customers, and we still don't think we focus on it enough, right? And it's not about just jacking prices; it's just understanding it and picking areas that you can really move the needle. I would say most funeral homeowners do a pretty good job managing expenses because they're not necessarily lavish spenders. Once in a while we'll come across a company that's overstaffed, but you don't see that much anymore. So on the expense side of the house, you really got to manage your cost of goods sold in this world. Super important, to make sure you're getting the best deals that you can wherever you're buying any of your merchandise, and you really know how to strategically mark up your merchandise, whether it's caskets or urns or videos. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? And I think understanding pricing dynamics is going to be a skill set going forward that a lot of people need to develop. They're not great at it, right? The merchandising in particular, I'm going to mark this urn up 2 times because that's what it is. Like, okay. And so, so I would say, manage your expenses. But even when I get a set of books for a deal to look at for a customer, and I shouldn't probably say this out loud, I probably don't even hardly look at the expenses because they are what they are. And I know what our customer is going to operate it at. Once I understand the personnel costs and the revenue, you get 90% to evaluation. Those are the 2 things you have to really understand: personnel costs and revenue.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting because I was going to ask you, I know you said revenue, and I was going to ask you if you meant EBITDA, but you literally mean revenue.
I literally mean revenue, right?
Revenue per call.
Revenue, because again, if we go back to you and I operating in the same community and I'm this much better than you at revenue, well, that means my EBITDA is going to be that much higher, which means if I'm getting a 6 or 7, or I'm just making numbers up on that, well, I'm going to get more than you because we're probably going to have pretty close to the same cost structure. Right?
Yeah, or you can at least fix it to be the same.
Correct. Right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And especially
that makes sense.
And especially in our world, the independent funerals we work with, they're really only looking at buying, the guy across town, or, they're not going 100 miles away. And so we know what it costs to operate that business. Right. And they know, okay, well, we don't need this. We don't need that. Let's, move this around. So really, to maximize EBITDA, you have to maximize revenue.
Yeah. So you can, you can adjust costs to get to where you need it to be. So if the revenue's higher for some reason in them, they're doing something to be able to generate more revenue, and you're going to know what your costs are.
Now to go back to one of your earlier questions, I will say that our customers that seem to be the most profitable pound for pound are the ones that do have multiple lines of business. They're not just the traditional funeral home. They're the funeral home plus, again, cremation society, ABC. And they get a big margin contribution from that cremation business because their funeral home is able to absorb so much of the overhead for the cremation business that when you add in that incremental revenue, whether it's pet, funeral home, whatever it is, I would bet, I've not really done a clinical study, but I would bet that our customers that really generate the highest consolidated margins are the ones that do have multiple lines of business.
Got it. Because you're probably able to serve a higher amount of customers under that curve of cost and volume,
same administrative costs. They have one IT
Yeah.
company that serves both firms, one accountant that serves both firms, right? I mean, you're able to leverage a lot of your G&A and a lot of your infrastructure, software technology. So all of a sudden I can layer on 1,000 cremation calls at $1,500 a piece with, you have costs with it, but it's not like starting a business from scratch because you share a lot of the resources. Not all the people, but a lot of the infrastructure.
Yeah. Obviously. Yeah, definitely. So switching gears more to your business, I've been to so many shows now, too many, but, national shows, NFDA, ICCA, Cana, all that stuff. And I would say that, I stay up to date with all the rumblings and deathcare and all the businesses. And, it's not that I didn't know Graystone, but Graystone's not out there making a bunch of noise at these shows. You guys don't have huge booths. You're not out there, riding in every thing. You don't have a podcast. And so, you guys kind of operate on the quieter side of the marketing and advertising to funeral homes, but I know you guys have very successful customers. Like we know people that you work with.
Yeah.
And so was that on purpose, or like, how do you guys continue to operate without being so noisy?
That is an interesting question, but it's actually kind of a simple answer. So, when we started, Frank and I started the business, we obviously he had one customer, I think it was at the time, right? So we got connected with a group early on, a good buddy of mine, Mike Turkowitz, who was the founder of Funeral Net, right? He's been out of the profession for a little while now. He and I had a relationship back in the 90s, and he introduced me to a group of, funeral homes that were in a study group together. And he got us in to do a presentation early on. And we went from one customer to, we went from 1 to 20, I bet, in a year and a half or two.
Oh, wow.
And it was just, there was the right timing for us, right? What we were talking about, the profession needed. It was a group that really, trusted us. It was a lot of very big hitters in funeral service. And we just, we didn't need to market and advertise because we couldn't hardly handle the business we had. Now that's a long time ago, but we have found that because what we do is very complicated and very, I would say, sophisticated, it's very hard for us to just cold call somebody or present somebody and say, here's what we do. So we have, let's say 135 customers now. We have 5 or 6 set to start, which for us is a lot. There's only so much we can handle at once. Every one of those is a referral from another customer. And so what we have found over time is when you do really, really exceptional work for your customers, we're not perfect. We've made mistakes, right? They are more than, funeral home owners are very relationship driven people. And when they have people that they think can benefit from your services, they will pick the phone up and call them and say, hey, Tyler, I'm into year 3 with Graystone now. I think you really need to talk to them. And so we've been very fortunate that I'm going to guess 90 to 95% of our customers over the last 20 years have been referrals from other customers. And, we've done a trade show here or there, but again, it's a complicated endeavor that we have. And it's, like I was not joking earlier, I think our customers can explain what we do better than I can. And so we really rely on our customers to help us grow our business. And hey man, hats off to our customer base. They do a great job doing it. And so, we just don't go out there much. We just don't.
It sounds like you guys do a lot. You can do a lot for different people, right? So people can find different value in what you do. So I guess it depends too. So
You're
it's
right.
not easy to say we do one thing.
You're right. And so some of our customers absolutely love the training, right? Love the training. And we try to get them to focus on the data. And they're like, okay, thanks, but I don't like that as much. I know I need it. And then some of our customers love all the data we do. And they're like, yeah, I know we need to do the training because it all works. But you're right. They'll focus on different things. And there's, like I said, we're not for everybody, right? It's not that we don't work with smaller funeral homes. It's not that we, whatever, but we also have non-compete agreements. And so If we work with a funeral home, in market A, well, we're done. We can't talk to anybody else in that market. And so what we found the one or two times we would, go to a trade show, oh, this sounds interesting. Well, I'm in, market A, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, sorry, I can't work with you because we already have another customer there. And that actually creates a lot of marketing issues on our end that to just put out a lot of blind marketing is difficult for us because of the fact that we have non-competes. And, what I say earlier, we have clients in like 400 markets now, or not market, they have 400 locations. So that's a lot of places we can't even bring on a new customer.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all about increasing that revenue per customer, right?
That's true. We really do rely on and we don't want to do business with people that we don't want to do business with. Right. And so we rely on our customers. We'll flush people out like, hey, Joe, we just got this referral from whatever. Is this somebody we want to do business with? And, not that they're big or small. We don't care about that. It's mindset, right? Are they progressive? Are they willing to invest in their business? Do they care about their people? Or are they just, they think we're going to come in, like you said earlier, position them for some sale or whatever and get out of there. I mean, we want to work with people for a long time. We're not singles hitters. We tell people up front, hey, I mean, I don't know the average life duration of a customer, but it's a long time.
Yeah, no, I think I've seen the same thing. Like the number one factor of, because we see a lot of new businesses starting, especially just because of what we do, right?
Oh, for sure.
I think the online cremation game is the shiny thing that's been around for past, like, let's say 4 or 5 years,
yeah,
right?
For sure.
So, I think the number one success thing that we can see if whether or not a business is going to be successful is basically mindset of the owner.
Yeah, that's right. I agree with that.
Like it doesn't, you can do price, you can be the cheapest, you can do whatever, but if it's really about that mindset, and if that mindset is there, they're going to figure it out. And if it's not there, then it doesn't matter what you do, how you price it, how you display, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, I think that's super insightful. Yeah, it's not about the website, it's not about the technology, it's about the mindset. I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Okay, so someone who has a bunch of experience, who has seen the insides of many different funeral homes, who have lived through a bunch of trends, like, what do you think death care looks like in 10 years from now?
I have no idea. I mean, it's a great question. I mean, I wish I had more insight into it. I mean, to give you, and the reason I say that jokingly is when I got back into this 20 years ago, I had been out for, I think that's about 4 or 5 years. I can't remember. And at the time when I was out, right, I was working in software. I worked in Boston, I worked in Florida, and, that led to technology. I mean, I'm sold that, I remember when Facebook, was the next big, private equity deal. And so I got back into funeral service in 2004, I guess fall of 2003. And I'm like, oh my God, this profession is just, we're stuck in time. And I remember talking to Frank at the time. I'm like, there's like 30% more funeral homes that need to be in this country. They're going to be out of business in 5 years. And 20 years later, it's just not happened yet. Right. And so, I kind of learned the hard lesson that here's where I think it's going. And I wasn't quite right. I do think that it's quite obvious that the customers, the needs of the customer is changing. There's no doubt. I think if anybody tells you they know exactly what those are, I think they're kidding themselves. Just because every family is different. There's no question that there will be people that dominate. I mean, one thing I'm very certain of is scale is the future, right? So if I can't figure out how to be a bigger funeral home in 10 years, I'm probably not going to be very happy. And you need scale to be able to afford corporate overhead. When I mean corporate overhead, I mean a good not accountant on staff, but a good internal controller. So many of our larger customers now have either a full-time or part-time HR person, which is worth every penny because they help with recruiting. Right. All of a sudden, when you get big enough that you have those resources, you have a huge competitive advantage over your competitor. And now all of a sudden, I have the cash flow to reinvest in my facility. All of a sudden, now I've got a facility that nobody else in town has, and so there's this in my brain. I can easily see, scale is going to solve a lot of problems. Now, how you get the scale is where the challenge is, right? So I think personally, we tell this to our customers, you need to be in every line of business you can, right? Whether you want to be in the online cremation business or not, you need to be in it, right? And you need to put just as much attention and energy into that as you put in your full service funeral home. Buying a cemetery is hard to do. I mean, there's other, pet businesses are market dependent. But I will tell you, you have to. I think for people to be successful in the future, you've got to be super successful on both ends. Let's just keep it to the funeral home and cremation business for now. I think you're
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
have to be super successful at both. And I think you're going to need,
Mm.
I think the better you are at both, the better you're going to be. Because I, I, I think 10 years from now, there are still going to be people that walk into a funeral home and they want to be taken care of, right? They don't want to go get their
Yeah,
own
yeah,
death.
yeah, of course.
They don't want to get their own death certificate. They don't want to write their own obituary. There's people that are willing to pay to get help, right? And I think that's going to continue to be around. But I also think there should be and better be less funeral homes serving that group. And then I think you're going to have the online segment, and that's going to be very viable and very important too. And so I think you have to know how to serve the really high. When I mean high end, I don't mean like 15, 20,000 hour funerals every day. I just mean the high demand customer that wants to pay for services, as well as those that are
Yeah.
looking for something simple. So I don't know if that's the answer that you might have anticipated. I think
No,
it's
no,
hard
no,
to
it's fine.
predict.
I
I think it's
I
hard
would
to
just like to
predict.
ask that question because I think everyone that comes onto the show has different perspectives and has lived through different lives and can see things from different areas. And I think that's, you know, really interesting that you mentioned like having a growth like mindset because, when I first, I came from technology too. And when I first came into this industry, people would talk about growth like in years, like I
Yeah.
did this many this year and I grew this many this year. And I'm like, that's a really long timeline for you to look at growth when,
Right.
you know,
Right.
like
Right.
your
Right.
business is changing every day. And like,
Yeah.
part of that was me having weird expectations of how quick death care was. Cause I knew, death care is a little bit slower.
Yeah. Right. Right.
But the growth mindset of it's okay to not look at it for like a year was kind of crazy to me. And
Yeah.
I still think now, you have to look at it a little bit closer than that.
Yeah, I mean, we try to get customers every month to look at their results, right? Like, hey, here's your volume, here's your mix, what's going on? Is there anything going on the market? And you're right, people tend not to look at their results as often as they should. And I think one thing that we see, I think personally, now you're talking to someone with a very high sense of urgency, but I do think one of the challenges among a lot of not just, I don't mean our clients, but in general, is I don't think a lot of owners act with enough sense of urgency because they've been around forever, right? Like, what's the rush? I'll get around to it next year.
Yeah.
Um, and I do think people that tend to act with a higher sense of urgency and implement ideas and strategies faster than others, I think that's a huge competitive advantage in any funeral home, right? And I think too many people just take too long to change.
Well, the innovation cycle in death care used to be really long, right?
Right.
Now we're seeing, just M&A and technology and
Yeah.
change. The innovation cycle within death care is happening very rapidly. So if you're not adapting at that pace, then yeah, you're gonna.
Well, yeah, and I would say one last thing, and this is probably going to sound really old school, but we see this through customers is there's no question in our mind that if you don't have the right type of facility in the future, right, you can have a really nice facility, but if it feels like I'm walking to a 1975 country club, that's not going to meet the needs of the future, people come in that business, and so when we see people put on these $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million extensions, renovations, whatever you want to call it, and it's got the right look and feel. It feels like you're walking into a beautiful hotel or whatever. Every single one of those people is growing market share and growing volume.
Yeah.
And if you're not in a position to be able to afford to really heavily invest in real estate and be patient enough for that to pay off in the future, I think you're at a huge disadvantage.
Awesome. Well, these were super insightful. I thank you so much, Scott. I think some of these were maybe hard truths, but I trust that what you're saying, you've seen it and you see it in the numbers and you see it every day in your businesses. So I think these were very good lessons that people should, at least take into consideration.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really, really appreciate the invite. It's nice to get to know you. We have a lot of customers that use your platform, are very supportive of your platform. And so it's nice to finally meet you after hearing, having so many customers adopt the Parting Pro system. So it's great. I really appreciate the invite.
No, thank you. And thank you for sharing those insights. Cause I know, those are years of experience for you to get some of those insights. So I really appreciate it. And
For sure.
I'm sure our listeners do too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I know you guys are heavily word of mouth, but if people do want to contact you, how can they contact you?
Yeah, I would say the best way to contact us would be the easiest way, just simplest way, probably be to email Lisa Strife on our team. Lisa manages all of our new business communication, all of our new business intake. Her and I fight all the time. Who's been around Graystone longer, her or I? And she's great. She's wonderful. She knows the business very well. She knows our customers very well. So her email is Lisa, Lisa, at graystoneassociates.com, and it's GRAY.
Graystone.
Easily the best way for somebody to get a hold of us.
Awesome. All right. Well, anything else that you want to share today?
No, man, I think we covered a lot of ground. Like I said, more than anything, I just appreciate the invite and the platform.
No, thank you very much. So for the Direct Cremation Podcast, I'm Tyler Yamasaki. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you guys next time.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you ever want to know more, please find us at directcremation.com.